out there. It's a beautiful morning here in the nation's capital, Abuja. Welcome to Daybreak on Trust TV, reaching you from our studios right here. I am Ayuba Ilya. Good morning.
Good morning, Ayuba. Good morning, Nigeria. I am Sumaya Abubakar. Thank you so much for joining us this beautiful morning. Now, I was quite shocked when I walked in and I saw you.
I knew you were going to go there.
It had to be said. He copied me, just to be clear.
Just so that you know, perhaps you are thinking, did these guys communicate while they were getting ready to come here? No, we didn't. We didn't decide what to wear on the same day, you know, wearing the same color and all that, but it just so happened, coincidentally, you know. And so we are now getting ready for any pre-wedding pics or anything.
You know, but you know, but speaking about, you know, what has been happening, let's talk about what's been happening the past weekend. I mean, there has been anticipation of how this would go, and there was tension, and definitely all the fears and worries of people actually came to pass, you know, during this off-cycle election. Yeah,
well, we've seen that finally it's done, if you like, in Kogi and in Imo State. We're still awaiting the final results from Bayelsa State. So yes, in some ways, some people, you know, it came with a lot of surprise in some ways, because if you listen to people in Kogi, for instance, the expectations for some is that it's going to be very violent.
Indeed.
But then it turns out it was relatively peaceful, you know, except for in Bayelsa, where we understand that one person has been killed and an INEC official was also kidnapped. You know,
a really sad situation. But then kudos to the security agents.
Yes.
I mean, they actually buckled up, so we would give them that one.
Yeah, so for the next 2 hours, we'll be talking about matters arising from the off-cycle elections, and also some of the major stories on the front pages of our newspapers, just to give you a sense of what is happening in the country at the moment. This morning, we observed, well, personally I observed while coming, it appears that we are experiencing field queues again, you know. So I don't know about where you are or your state where you are, but here in Abuja, it appears that we are seeing a gradual, you know, mounting of queues in the filling stations. I hope it doesn't last. I hope it dissipates as soon as possible, so that we do not have to, you know, experience any difficulty as far as that is concerned. So let's go straight to the headlines now.
Indeed. All right, we'll start with the headline here. It says, APC's Ahmed Usman Ododo wins Kogi governorship election.
Hashtag Bayelsa decides 2023, INEC adjourns results collation till today.
And grumbling over $54 million domestic airlines trapped fund.
All right. Now, the details now. The All Progressives Congress governorship candidate Ahmed Usman Ododo has been announced winner of the just concluded November 11 governorship election in Kogi State. Ahmed Ododo won with 446,237 votes, defeating his closest rival, Murtala Ajaka of the Social Democratic Party, who garnered 259,052, while Dino Melai of the People's Democratic Party polled 46,362 votes. This is despite INEC announcing that fresh polls will be conducted in some polling units in the Magongo local government area of the state on November 18, 2023. The returning officer for the Kogi State governorship election, Professor Johnson Urama, announced this last night in Lokoja, the Kogi State capital. He said Ahmed Ododo of the APC, having certified by law, is hereby declared the winner and is returned elected.
In Bayelsa State, the Independent National Electoral Commission has adjourned the collation of governorship election results from the local government areas in Bayelsa State till 12 noon today. The head of Department, Voter Education and Publicity, INEC Office, Yanagwa, Mr. Wilfred Ifoga, announced this to party agents, election observers and journalists at the State's Collation Center yesterday in Yanagwa, the Bayelsa State capital. The state returning officer, Professor Kuta Farouk, had earlier on adjourned the exercise till 6 p.m. yesterday after the collation of results from the Sagbama, Nembe and Ekeremo local government areas. Results from the remaining two local government areas, Brass and Southern Ijo, were being expected before the adjournment was announced.
All right. Now, amidst the clamor by foreign airlines to repatriate their trapped funds amounting to $800 million US. No fewer than 4 domestic airlines have over 54 million US, which is equivalent to 43.4 billion naira trapped with the Central Bank of Nigeria. Daily Trust reports that the money comprises foreign exchange forward paid to the Central Bank of Nigeria as well as payment for participating airlines in the 2023 Hajj operations. The CBN had recently commenced clearing the forex backlog with an assurance that the process will continue until all the obligations were attended to. The money comprises foreign exchange forward paid to the CBN as well as payment for participating airlines in the 2023 Hajj operations. But the domestic operators are grumbling over the trapped funds, which they said had stalled their operations as they need dollars for their aircraft maintenance, lease and other obligations.
There's a lot of talk there. But let's take a look at the first package. Governor Hope Uzodinma has been declared the winner of the 2023 governorship election, the off-cycle election in the state, by the Independent National Electoral Commission. The governor won the poll to serve a second term of another 4 years in office under the platform of the All Progressive Congress. The governor, who was declared the winner, beat the 2/3 requirement and won in all the 27 local government areas of the state in the election result declared by the INEC returning officer for the polls, Professor Abayomi Fashina, Vice Chancellor of Federal University, Oye Ekiti. He polled a total of 540,408 votes, defeating Samuel Anyau of the People's Democratic Party, who scored 71,504 votes, followed by Athan Achonu of the Labour Party with 64,081 votes.
However, I wish to comment on the incident of 4 years earlier with regards to the Labour Party chairman that was physically abused. We condemn that action, not because of this, but because of this is a civil process that should not at any point be encouraged to have any sign of physical abuse whatsoever.
Something happened. If you go to my group, where they call it, go and see what happened. We have other persons we have stopped, torn, and scattered. And that is the country home of the candidate of Africa. So how can we not be comfortable on something? We are not comfortable because we are afraid that when we talk, they may beat us and they may kill us. Who wants to die? Nobody wants to die. But we are not comfortable at all with it.
Some observers, a civil society group and party chairman expressed disapproval of the electoral conduct in Imo, describing the process as a sham.
All right, now, in a bid to curb oil theft in the Niger Delta region, the Nigerian Navy has restated its commitment to safety in maritime travel during the festive period. The commanding officer of the Forward Operations Base, Boni Camp, Reginald Adoki, stated this while parading the crew of a vessel arrested for transporting suspected illegally refined products. The report.
The commanding officer of the Forward Operations Base, Bonny, Captain Reynolds, says the Navy has intensified efforts in tracking down oil thieves and deterring criminals involved in the economic sabotage. Setting off from the Forward Operations Base, Bonny, in Rivers State, the men and officers of the base were in high spirits as they conduct journalists to the Cawthorne Channel, where an arrested vessel, Mother Cabrini, is anchored. The Mother Cabrini, alongside her 10-man crew, have been arrested on the suspicion of carrying an estimated 80,000 litres of suspected illegally refined diesel, and the vessel's captain speaks on their arrest.
Well, actually, when the guy came, he told me that when we get to Bonny here, we are going to, it's supposed to be outside. When we get here, he said we should stop and we want to, I don't know what he said, he said we should stop here. That's when if I know that it's not original, I won't have said the boat or come to normal where the original is. Or I'm supposed to leave the vessel there, but he told me that it's original and we will stop here and collect water, fresh water to supply the foreign vessel.
Speaking to newsmen, the commanding officer of the base, Captain Reynold Adoki, says the product aboard the arrested vessel has been tested at a lab and confirmed to be below acceptable standards.
MV Mother Cabrini was arrested by the Nigerian Navy Forward Operating Base tactical units. The base responded by deploying the tactical units when we had credible intelligence that the vessel was outbound the Bonny Channel proceeding to sea. And on intercepting the vessel, we carried out a physical inspection of our tanks, checked our documents, and also interrogated the crew. So between yesterday and today, we were able to establish some findings so far. The first one is the fact that the vessel, as the captain has claimed, has about over 80,000 liters of products we initially had suspected to be illegally refined AGO, that's diesel.
The commanding officer says after the conclusion of investigations, the vessel and its crew will be handed over to the appropriate agency of government for further action and subsequent prosecution, noting that it is in line with the Navy's strategic partnership with other security agencies.
Cattle traders in Nguru local government area of Yobe State are lamenting that the rise in transportation cost is slowing down the trading activities. They are also appealing to the government to subsidize the cost of transportation to stimulate their business that is now recording low patronage. Trust TV's correspondent Idris Jibrin reports that the trailers, loads of cattle, are now being transported from Nguru to Lagos at the cost of 1.2 million naira. Take a look.
As far back as the 15th century, the Guru town in present-day Yobe State remains one of Nigeria's oldest commercial centers. This century-old cattle market tells a story of how merchants from different parts of Africa traded here for generations. But not anymore. Inadequate capital, lack of government interventions, and the high cost of doing business are now affecting the continuous survival of these cattle traders in Guru.
Our major problem includes the high cost of fuel and foreign exchange. Before now, a trailer load cost between 400 to 500,000 naira, but now is 1.3 million naira.
According to the traders, the price of cattle has drastically increased, largely due to increase in price of animals' feeds and supplements, as well as the cost at which these animals are being transported, among other challenges.
I think because of the problem of transport, government can help us restore our train services, which will significantly help us to sustain our businesses. You can see we have customers from Kano, Jigawa, Lagos, and several other places across the country. Therefore, if we have this train back and sound, I think things will definitely become easier for us.
Although Guru cattle market is still thriving, but these people are worried about the future of their businesses if the situation persists.
Honestly, most of our people now are worried. They feel that if this situation continues, many people from Niger, Chad, and several other places will stop coming here to do business because the cost of transportation is too much for us.
Despite this, there is optimism among the traders that there may be light at the end of the tunnel. They also expect government's quick intervention. But while they wait, their suffering may remain until something is done to change the situation. Idris Jibrin, Trust TV News, Yobe.
All right. Now, 2 years after the flood incident that claimed the ever-busy road linking Tiga and Rurum towns in Bebeji local government area of Kano State, residents are still struggling to maintain a narrow passage to keep the road from completely being inaccessible. Salim Ibrahim, who visited the area, reports.
2 years after the flood incidents washed up Tiga Dam and made the road deplorable, motorists and other road users say the road is yet to receive the needed attention. The overflow of the Tiga Dam, which cut off the main road and destroyed several farmlands and almost washed away the Sarkin Kogi Bridge. Neither rehabilitation of the road nor reconstruction of the bridge has commenced 2 years after. It is observed that the condition of the road is changing from bad to worse, and the narrow passage down the road managed by Good Samaritans is now becoming emblematic.
We are not finding it easy climbing this hill, and at a point in time, we have to pay for us to get to the top of the hill. Some of the drivers will push us up and we give them stipends.
Rano, Rurum, Tiga, Durmawa, Boys Quarters, Sarkin Kogi, Sabuwar Kaura, Ruwan Kanya, Gidan Tsamiya, Doka, Gargai, and Rantan are some of the communities that directly depend on the road for economic and social activities. While many struggle to get across with the help of the residents who found new job in helping motorists, this year's rainy season saw the passage being eaten up and gradually increasing as erosion takes over.
We are the ones saddled with the responsibility of repairing this road during and after the erosion. We are calling on the government to come to our aid and fix the road, which is one of the popular roads in the state. Since the road serves as a route to some other states, it will go a long way to develop the state if developed by government.
When the dam overflowed 2 years ago, the then Minister of Water Resources, Suleiman Adamu, visited the area and called for the closure of the Sarkin Kogi Bridge to ensure the safety of motorists and pedestrians. Though high-ranking government officials pledged government intervention and commitment to the protection of lives and property of citizens, but so far, nothing had been done to address the suffering of motorists and pedestrians on this road. Salim Umar Ibrahim, Trust TV News, Kano.
All right, these are the packages that we have for you this morning. Do not go anywhere. When we come back, it will be time for our first discussion on the off-cycle election in the 3 states that was conducted on Saturday. Stay with us.
That's right, you too could be one of the 20 Zenith Bank customers that will win 150,000 Naira every 2 weeks from June 1st, 2023 until May 31st, 2024 in the Zenith Better Life Promo 3. To qualify, simply open a Zenith Bank account. For more information, visit www.zenithbank.com/betterlife. Live the better life with Zenith Bank.
A consensus. We did all our best. You see, in politics, you give your contribution to the best of your ability.
If you want, I'll forward to you this statement. You go to this bank and verify.
But there are people who say not spending money is not a virtue in
coming.
itself.
Let me finish.
Because there's so much to be done.
Let me finish. Now, you don't allow me to explain myself.
The recent development shows abductions are now a factor of informants embedded in community.
It's not about the people of Katsina to say that, no, during my administration I was able to stop insecurity. No, it's about collective responsibility for all of us.
And what we should ask ourselves is not what has been seen, is the life better? Are there more people who are unemployed who are not become employed? Is the level of corruption has gone down? Is there inclusion? All those issues.
We're actually a gas country with associated oil. Our focus has always been on oil, that we have never paid significant attention to gas.
To do it effectively, we need to have honest conversation with ourselves. Government needs to come down from its higher horse and communicate with the people and build trust.
There must be a solution. We cannot continue this way. They must come back to the table and agree. So whose child will do deny education? All these children that sit for jam, they want to go to higher institutions.
But just a short while ago you were saying that why bring 10 children when you cannot cater for them? So why bring more universities when you cannot cater for the existing?
It was never a consensus. We did all our best. You see, in politics, you give your contribution to the best of your ability.
If you want, I'll forward to you this statement. You go to this bank and verify.
But there are people who say not spending money is not a virtue in itself.
Let me finish.
Because there's so much to be done.
Let me finish. Now, you don't allow me to explain myself.
The recent developments shows abductions are now a factor of informants embedded in community.
It's not about the people of Katsina to say that, no, during my administration I was able to stop insecurity. No, it's about collective responsibility for all of us.
And what we should ask ourselves is not what has been seen, is the life better? Are there more people who are unemployed who are not become employed? Is the level of corruption has gone down? Is there inclusion?
Thank you for staying with us. You're watching Daybreak on Trust TV. Now going into our first discussion on the program. The off-cycle election in Bayelsa, Imo and Kogi states was held over the weekend. Election observers commended the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, for proper planning and security agencies for deployment of adequate security. But however, in some places there were cancellations, like in Bayelsa, where materials were lost to both accident and breach of peace in some parts of Kogi and Imo states. Now, we'll be talking about this. We will be appraising the off-cycle elections, successes recorded, challenges and lessons that will help Nigeria improve her electoral process. To do justice to this, we have in the studio political scientist and analyst in the studio, Dr. Hashim Suleiman, and he is joined by Arms-Free Ajanaku, the Countering Disinformation Lead, CDD. Thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak this morning.
Thank you. Such a privilege to be here.
All right. Let's start with you, Doctor. Let's start with you, Arms-Free. From Kogi, for instance, there were a lot of expectations. People have known Kogi, I don't know, for the wrong reasons anyways, to be very violent when it comes to election. And so people were expecting that this time around as well, there's going to be a lot of violence in the state. But it turns out not to be the case, you know. What do you think, you know, led to this changes this time?
All right, I think a lot of efforts went into the pre-election period in terms of both the work INEC did, the synergy INEC had with the security agencies, and also we must not forget the very valiant roles played by civil society organizations. For example, at the Center for Democracy and Development, we were on ground in Kogi State, where we were doing our work on countering disinformation, because some of the pockets of violence you saw, and some of the issues around apathy or people not turning out across the 3 states, actually came from the very high level of disinformation that the political actors used in the build-up to this process. But good enough, we were also able to get out there and try to enlighten the electorate. As a matter of fact, we had a number of radio programs. We had fact-checkers on the ground, who we refer to as the soldiers of mouth, who were also able to collect information, not just on social media, but also offline. And we had a team that did a lot of fact-checking, and that also fed back into the process. We are still currently on the ground. Our people are collecting information, both our observers and our information disorder experts that are looking at that area. So I would say it's a collective responsibility. So
talking about information disorder, what would you say about the claims made by the governor, Yaya Bello, about the fact that violence in Kogi election is a media creation? I don't know if you heard that.
Yes.
He made a claim that it's a media creation. What do you say to that?
No, we disagree vehemently with that kind of notion to create the impression that these things are artificial, when we know, based on research, because we are not just talking off the top of our head. We are collecting data. We were on the ground in Kogi, where we had extensive consultations with stakeholders, political parties, people from communities, and they gave us the practical ways in which the political actors peddle disinformation. They create troll farms. They engage young people, pay them, In fact, they fund them, very clearly, and we have all of this data. So it is not, it's not enough for someone, however highly placed, to just come and dismiss all of that. This is a problem. We are not putting the blame on any particular person's doorstep, or maybe we're saying it's a particular political party that is responsible for that. As a matter of fact, all the parties in the states, especially the leading parties, both the APC, the SDP, and all the other parties, were engaged actively in disinformation. And when you ask them, because we actually had extensive interviews with even the political parties, and when you ask them, they will say it's the other party that is peddling disinformation. But from our findings, from our interaction with the people on the ground, it was clear that it was a part of their strategy, because they do not want to go the whole hog of engaging voters, canvassing, the issues they would put forward on the table when it's time for governance. So they now take disinformation as the only way to hoodwink voters. And the other very terrible part of it is that the disinformation also targets the election management body, that's INEC. Because you had several disinformation saying INEC will not take materials to certain parts of the state, and that, in a sense, was dampening the confidence of citizens until we kept on doing our fact-checking and then putting the information back there to say this is actually what's happening. You don't have to be hoodwinked. So, like what our soldiers of mouth also did was that we try to bridge the digital divide between urban areas and rural areas to ensure that the people in the rural areas who may not have access to information infrastructure, like there are some areas in Kogi State where the radio stations, as a result of violence, have been affected. They are not transmitting, and so we had to use word of mouth ways, meet people at places where they gather in communities to communicate to them that this is actually what's happening with the election. This is how the beavers will be used, because there is a lot of information disorder, and our role was really to counter all of that.
Indeed. Let's hear from Dr. Hashim. And now, with everything that is happening on this off-cycle election, would say that it's a bit of progress from what happened in the general election. Now, would you say that Nigerians now are waking up to realize that as a person, you need to be patriotic and also be active in civil society, because they are one of the stakeholders who showed that it's not only up to the INEC and also the security agent to do this work, and this actually aid in curbing some of the tension that was around. So would you say, like, as Nigerians, we need to do more?
Yeah, obviously, because politics is local, like they say. Democracy is a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. And so at the end of the day, the outcome of whatever it is that democracy, of which politics is an integral part of, whatever it brings about, is a function of what the people at the end of the day agree to. So, yeah, you could say there's some level of increased awareness, or that, again, it showed that the whole confidence on INEC or the democracy itself is not entirely eroded, because, I mean, if you look at the numbers that were coming from all of the elections, the 3 elections, I think they look pretty encouraging, and that's good to hear. Because
is it really? Because I'm curious, if you look at the numbers from Kogi State, for instance, we're talking about a total registered voters of 1.8 million who are eligible to vote in that election, and the turnout really barely, maybe around 1 million or so.
Yes, but that's what I'm saying. So has it ever been really more than that? I mean, in terms of taking it in percentage. So the point I'm saying is that the turnout could give you enough data to come to a conclusion that the confidence on our democracy and elections is not entirely eroded. I mean, you're not having like a situation where everywhere was empty and people, because prior to the elections, perhaps maybe because of the whole review of the 2023 elections, there was this insinuation and expectation that people had probably lost confidence in the whole process. But I mean, it was soothing to see that people were coming out. So for me, I would really want to say that our democracy is improving. And I think that the people really do accept it at the level as it is. I mean, if you're one of those who tweets a lot of English, you may not necessarily agree, but the main voters, the majority of them, do perhaps agree with the level at which it's developing. And so we would say that, yeah, it's encouraging that the confidence is still intact. And so perhaps going forward,
perhaps we should interrogate this, saying about our democracy evolving and so on.
Yeah.
You mentioned while talking that to a large extent, the major players in the election in Kogi State weren't really interested in, talking about manifesto or what they are coming to do. They were mainly talking about disinformation. That's where they are majoring their strength and spreading misinformation and so on. And to a large extent also, if you think about the concerns for many of the voters, it's about the ethnic card. It's about, it's time for our own, to be in that seat and all that. So when you look at that, can we really say our democracy is evolving, or rather we are much more engaged in political activity rather?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that position, in as much as we want to be optimistic and don't dampen the belief and the confidence of the voters in the capacity of democracy as the veritable vehicle for the realization of our national aspirations. We want to be optimistic, but our optimism does not preclude the fact that, like you said, we have to ruthlessly interrogate the system, interrogate the processes, interrogate the outcomes. Do these outcomes, at the end of the day, translate into the improvement of the lives of citizens? We have invested a lot in this process, and this is why, both all the knowledge workers, researchers, journalists, every day we sit down to interrogate it. We look at the case of Kogi, for example. In the pre-election period, we at CDD made the point around some of the core issues that would drive the mobilization in the election and the whole electoral process. We mentioned identity as a major factor, and you can see that identity brought in a kind of energy into the election. But is that the kind of energy you want in elections? An energy whereby people, the political contestants, are not really putting the issues, they are not really putting the issues that matter to the people in the discourse. They are busy distracting the people with all sorts of stratagems and tactics that really do not add value to the democratic process itself. So for us, those are the things we have tried to interrogate. And at the moment, we would say, okay, the Kogi election, there are areas to celebrate. The fact that we saw security deployment that brought down the tension in a sense. Because if you compare this to 2019, I was in Kogi in 2019. And in fact, on the street, what we were referring to the election as was ta-ta-ta-ta election. Yes, because all through the night in Kogi in 2019, there was shooting. In fact, that was that's one of the observations people have made in this election, that or when you make that comparison, you see that it was not as volatile as the last time, where there was a free reign of terror and thuggery and just outlaws overrunning the process and undermining the.
I think that year we saw a member of a party even being killed, burned to death in her home.
Exactly.
I'll never forget that incident.
Exactly. This time around, we still recorded incidents. Our observers, for example, recorded a case in Dekina local government where someone who was alleged to be running away with a ballot box was shot and killed. There are also other pockets here and there, but on a comparative scale, from where we are coming from in 2019, we can say that security, INEC collaboration this time around actually doused the tension and provided a very secure space for the voters to go out there and exercise their franchise. But having said that,
but sorry, I really want to, insist that the democracy is improving. You see, let me go to, for example, the sector of ICT, where I'm a little familiar with, and I know how they do their things. If you give a person digital knowledge without giving him the tools to utilize to go and now be on that digital space and do what they have to do, you've done nothing. You've practically done zero. So it's the same thing in this case, right? Where you have a society that has at least 80% between the illiterate to semi-literate level, then the development you're expecting, you have to appropriate it with all of that. So that's why I said, you know, it's very essential that we distinguish all of our very top conversations on Twitter and the rest of them to reality on the ground. The politicians, and that's why I started by saying politics is local. The politicians understand the people, the majority of those ones who are going to cast the vote, and they know what they like to hear, they know the issues they like to discuss. I do also participate in talking to the grassroots. And in fact, they keep calling me to even come. I said, with what I see, how me and you guys engage, it's going to be difficult for me to come and because trust me, there's going to be, because you are not going to understand my language, I'm not going to. So yes. I'll probably have to compromise or get the way of how the politicians do it nowadays.
Exactly.
So for me, I just see it as the politicians just following the trend. So it's more about now talking about how to encourage all of the leaders that are there to help develop all of these critical sectors like education and the rest of them. So we'll have a society that is aware.
Okay, so in other words, the politicians are playing to the gallery. That's what you're saying, isn't it?
Would you say playing to the gallery or being realistic?
How?
Yeah, because
realistic, the people at the end of the day want something, isn't it? Which is improved lifestyle, right? The people want their lives to be changed. They want their lives to, so that's the basic, and I believe that that's the whole idea of having a democratic system.
Beautiful.
But when a politician comes, at the end of the day, what he wants is to be in power, not really.
I do understand.
So the people have to make a demand and so
on. But then that's where areas like the CDDs, for example, come in. And I'm telling you this because I'm experienced in the field. So CDD could send somebody to a community right now to gather them, to tell them do this, do that. Some of them will start even leaving the place. What's the English that this one is speaking?
I just shared the experience of our work. I just shared the experience of our work with the soldiers of Mouth, for example. These are people in communities who got to see that the disinformation that was being churned out by the political actors was creating conflicts even within communities. So let's not create the impression that even the English we are speaking on Twitter or the ideas or the ideals we are pursuing for the improvement of democracy is in an abstract sense. No, we are connecting with the people at the grassroots, and the people can see that some of these things we are talking about. You saw in some polling units where people were voting. You saw the state of schools in those places. So they understand it. So even if we are coming with big grammar, or that is how we encapsulate it at our own level, we still have ways of like, for example, the radio programs we are doing and the radio jingles we are airing in those states, they are in the local languages. So we are not talking off the head or over the head of the people. The people are participants, because we believe that democracy cannot realize the objectives it should realize if it is not inclusive and if it is not participatory. So we are doing actually better than the politicians.
All right. You know, talking about these things, of course.
Ajibade is standing by, one of our correspondents. He is from Imo State, joining us from Imo. Thank you so much, Ajibade Praise. Before we come back to the studio, let's get what can you tell us about this morning in Imo State? Yes, we know that the final result has been declared, and winner has been declared in person of the incumbent governor Hope Uzodimma. What's the mood like this morning? Hello. It appears we have a challenge with the audio.
Ajibade, are you with us? Can you unmute your mic, please? We cannot hear you at the moment, so I think we need to take a step back. Then we'll come back to Ajibade to hear the progress of what is happening. So Earlier, Doctor, let me throw this question at you. I think after casting his vote, the former president, Goodluck Jonathan, addressed the press, and he made mention of the fact that he thinks they should cancel the off-cycle election. I mean, all the elections should be done at the same time. And based on what, you know, some of the civil societies are saying, they're mentioning that having now people are able to pay attention more to do so. Do you think the best thing is for us to reduce this to no off cycle, minimize the elections that would happen in different states? That way all eyes would be more on deck, or should it go you know, with general election? But let's take a pause to that question, because we have Ajibade back. So Ajibade, tell us, how are people in Imo celebrating the outcome of the election? I mean, we want to hear the reactions of Imo people, considering there was low turnout of voters.
Yeah, if you can hear me now, which I can hear you from my own hand here, loud and clear. The mood in Imo State, as it were now, is with mixed feelings. Mixed feelings in the sense that some celebrating the re-election of Governor Hope Uzodinma, and others are saying the election did not go the way of the masses. They have wanted a situation whereby the election will actually reflect the wish and yearnings of the masses. But then, what can we say? The governor has emerged for the second tenure, which is another 4 years again.
But if you look at the margin of lead in Imo State, it's massive, you know. So why should anyone think that it didn't go the way of the masses? I mean, if anyone did not come out to cast votes, whose fault? I mean, we're talking about. I know that there are about 2.3 million registered eligible voters in Imo State, and from the outcome of what we are seeing, the turnout is really very low. So if the outcome at the end of the day does not reflect the, you know, wishes of the people, who's to blame?
Well, I want to tell you categorically that people who actually stayed back for not coming out to cast their vote did not do so because they actually wanted to do so. Some of them was as a result of fears and apprehension in the system. Some allege that the over-militarization of the process scared them away. Some also said that they are not having full confidence in INEC vis-a-vis what has played out in the previous election. And as a matter of fact, they called severally for the removal of the present rec, talking about Professor Sylvia Agu, which was not removed. She was not removed because INEC also came up and said there was no reason to remove her, that there are no proof of what the people are alleging. They are saying, the people initially said the election under her, honestly, they don't trust her leadership of INEC in the state, and they don't believe that a credible and free, fair election will come out of her leadership. And as such, they wanted a neutral person. They wanted a new person to handle the elections affair of Imo State. But then their request was not granted. That's on one side. Also, the issue of the NLC strike in Imo State, which has so much put a lot of tension on the people. You know, Imo State have been in blackout for over how many days now, for over some week plus now. And the people, you know, I mean, people have lost hope in the system, I must tell you. And that's the reason why they didn't really come out. Not that they don't want to vote, not that they don't want to exercise their franchise, but then the lack of confidence in the system kept many of them away.
Okay, so what about talk to us about the incident that happened at the Collation Center, where we saw an agent of the Labour Party beating up and taken out of the Collation Center, where he was making claims about elections didn't hold in, is it Osu local government area or so? What's the true situation of that story?
Well, that is part of the yearnings. That's part of the issues the masses are complaining about. You can imagine an agent of a political party who is a critical stakeholder in the entire process too was beaten up just for asking a question, just for standing up and saying this should be addressed. And the next day was beaten from all manner of people, co-agents like him of different political parties started beating him up and what have you. And this is a place where we have thousands of security personnel, there, who were supposed to wade into the matter, rescue him, and see the possibility of even arresting those who were beating him for no just cause.
Yeah, but no,
I mean,
he appeared to be disruptive. I watched the video. He appeared to be disruptive. It was like he wanted to disrupt the whole process from proceeding. We can talk about, what was supposed to be the appropriate step to take in that instance, which I believe should have gone a different way. But then that's not the situation. However, was it really true, the claims he was making about, elections not holding in Osu?
Election actually held in Osu, I would say. Election actually held in Osu. Though there were some issues of, Osu has been a very volatile area due to the insecurity and what have you. But there is a way they normally hold their election. The people actually do, even though some of them had earlier on a kind of deserted their homes and all that. Whenever there is an election, they do make arrangement and at least go back, visit their polling units and cast their votes. I am aware of that. So to an extent, election, I would say, held in Osu. But then him coming up to ask questions and to know and to get clarification as to whether election held there or not, as to whether it should be, scrutinized and cross-check so that people can get to know the facts. And beating was what he gets. For me, I feel it's not the way it should go for a country of ours.
All right, thank you so much, Ajibade, for that update. That's Ajibade Praise, our reporter from Imo State. All right, Doctor, earlier, before we talk on what is happening in Imo, or what happened, rather, my question to you about what the former President Goodluck said about off-cycle should be cancelled. What's your take on that?
Yeah, but that's an issue that has to do with law. And so how do you want to go around it? Are we going to tie it to constitutional amendments? Because I'm also aware one of the presidential candidates in the 2023 election in his post-Supreme Court ruling press statement also spoke about 6-year single tenure. So are all of these comments, for example, meant to come into being through constitutional amendments? That's left to be seen. But in a nutshell, is to say that we really have to learn to localize our situations. Really, right? For me, I'm commending the things that people like CDD and the others, but trust me, like he said, they cannot do enough. Right? Resource-wise and the rest of it. And that's why the politicians are taking advantage of the fact that, the work that these guys are doing is probably not sufficient, and then still taking advantage of all of those other vulnerabilities that I spoke about earlier of the people. And what makes it interesting is, again, that the people seem to really be comfortable with the pace of the development, because if they're not, then you see them out. Do you see anybody out on the street? Are they
really comfortable, or they just don't know better?
Sorry?
Are they really comfortable, or they just don't know better? We know that the tons of videos that we see on social media of how people lament every single day about the terrible situation of the country.
Yes,
so
if your lamentation, so what I'm saying is, if your lamentation is real, in democracies, we see all developed democracies all over the world now. Look at the fights between Hamas and Israel. You can see tons and tons of people in various countries coming out to express. So the point I'm saying
Dr. Hashim, there's a direct correlation between awareness, political awareness, and participation. So if the people aren't so informed about what their role is in a democratic system, how do you think that they will make demands? And if civil society groups do not go in and make it known to the people that these are the things that you should be looking out for?
Great.
How do they get to participate?
So, beautiful. This is 24 years or over of democracy from 1999 till now. I would not say that the people are not aware of how the whole politics plays out or whatever. But I think the biggest problem has to do with the ability to organize, right? Maybe a whole lot of them have this feeling like I have a feeling I want to do this. The next person probably has the same feeling like me. But how can we then organize to probably make it formidable? I think that's where the problem is, and that's where the politicians use the divide and rule thing, to, the tribal. So I probably like the same thing with you, but because we don't speak the same tribe or some other, little mundane issues, that's not going to let us come together. And so that's why I tell you that then everybody has to come back to reality, and it's probably comfortable with the pace. So the whole work is still passed on to us now, to have to continue to make all of this kind of conversations and put pressure. So perhaps the electoral reforms will be
so
done.
Good enough that you pointed that perhaps because there's no better way to organize, not really because they're comfortable with the pace of things, but perhaps they just don't know better.
So they've accepted. That's what I'm saying.
So an accepting the fate,
acceptability. What do you call it?
So, but let's talk about the integrity of the process.
All right, let's just take a pause on that. There is incoming reactions of what is happening in Kogi, the reactions of people over there. So let's take a look at the reaction of Kogi people before we come back.
Well, I would say sad. Not because of the outcome, but because you lay a complaint through a process and it is not actually attended to. You were all here when in the collation room I raised some germane questions and observation. In the afternoon, we laid a complaint yesterday as to the outcome of the results that was uploaded from the beavers to the IREF, where there were massive overvoting, even in the local government of upward of about 80,000. Difference between accredited voters and the vote that was in excess. And the National Commissioner issued a statement and a release, which is signed, to say that this is unacceptable and that it will be looked into. But they never did.
But the position of the returning officer is that the margin of lead is far ahead of the council votes.
There are two different things. People are just mixing it up. Sure, you understand? So we have a case of certain irregularities at different locations from Ogori Magongo, which INEC themselves discovered, and within their own powers, they cancelled. Those are the ones that they said they wanted to do a rerun. But this, we laid a complaint of overvoting in 3 local governments. In the Kogi Central.
So if I understand you, your party seems not to be satisfied with the entire process.
I'm not just not satisfied.
What's your next line of action?
Well, I'm sent here on an errand. I go back to report to the party and to also report to the candidate. The decision of whatever they are going to do lies with them. I don't have much say about that.
Yes, it's an election period. Everybody needs to talk and everybody needs to make complaint. An electoral process is a procedure which starts and must end. We're happy today that I commend INEC for taking all the complaints from other parties, and they treated it. At the end of the day, they now find out that all their agitation and noise was just for them to be heard. But all the same, we're calling on all the parties to come and join hands with the new government. We run an open government in Kogi State, and I know that the incoming governor will definitely put his arm open for the other parties to come and be part of the government.
All right, wonderful reaction there from the people. But we have our reporter, Shafiu Suleiman, in Kogi State, who would give us the updates via phone. Shafiu, how is it looking out there, amidst the chairman, that was alleged caught with money and ammunition for vote buying and other stuff, and also the emergence of Ododo as the governor? How are Kogi people really taking it from your view?
Well, thank you. Lokoja this morning actually remained calm, and then there's a sense of tranquility. There's, people are moving about doing their normal businesses after the declaration of the winner of the Saturday election. Security remain tight. The security personnel are still on the streets and at their strategic locations, waiting to forestall any attempt to breach the peace. But as for the people, they've been going about their normal businesses. Right from yesterday, even before the declaration of the winner, a number of supporters of the ruling party were seen on the streets, in convoys, demonstrating, celebrating the victory. They roll out the drums, and then celebrating their candidate's victory. And then they were doing all of that without any harassment or molestation. Even the security agencies were watching them as they go about doing this. So generally, there's peace, there's calm in the state right now as we speak. There hasn't been any major incident, if you like, or report of any breach of peace anywhere, especially here in Lokoja.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Shafiu. So as regards the areas that were affected with the issue of fake results that were manufactured while the voting was still ongoing, what do we know about what's happening in those areas?
Well, as you rightly mentioned, and as we all know, the INEC headquarters, released a statement to that effect. And they talked about the fact that they're not going to accept results from those polling units, disputed polling units, or wards where election results were said to be tampered with. And that's exactly what happened at the collation center yesterday. When the returning officer from Ogori Mogongo, arrived to present his results, he actually told the returning officer, the state returning officer, that he had the results of only 1 out of the 10 wards in that local government area, which he tended. He did mention that the other 9 wards in the local government area, there is no result for him to present. But he was asked, to mention the number of PVCs collected in those wards, perhaps for the purpose of tabulation, which was done actually at the end of the exercise. So that is exactly what happened. Agents of the opposition parties, especially the SDP, made attempts to draw the attention of the state returning officer to that pending issue, which he said, well, it's been handled at the headquarters. But then he gave the microphone to the national commissioner attached to him during the process of collation, who also threw more light on it. He said actually there was a communication from the headquarters again concerning that matter. I also happened to come across that statement talking about the possibility of maybe reruns in those disputed polling units. It was scheduled for November 18 and so on and so forth. But then there's a caveat in that statement. If you look at it, they put everything. They now attribute. The commission was relying on the state returning officer to do his tabulations and see whether that it's a possibility. But in the end, after collating all the results from the 21 local government areas, the returning officer, Professor Urama, told us there at the center that he had done the tabulations and he has realized that there is a margin of lead of around 200,000 between the two major, leading candidates. And then the council votes were just about 16,000. So going by the Electoral Act, provisions of the Electoral Act, he went ahead and declared the winner of the election.
So will elections then hold in those places still, given that, you know, it may not have an impact on the outcome of the elections or the results?
Well, the returning officer was actually silent on that. He just did what he was supposed to do, what he was assigned to do. Perhaps he left that to the headquarters of INEC to continue with that. But then,
because the information we received is that there's going to be elections on the 18th of this month, next Saturday, in those affected areas, 59 polling units thereabouts, where we understand 9 out of 10 of the wards in those areas were affected, and like you mentioned, about 16,000 voters in those areas.
Yes, that's the position actually. But then there wasn't much clarification on that, especially on the part of the state returning officer. I think he limited himself or restricted himself to just what he was asked to do. As a collation officer, he collected the results and then look at the figures and then declare the winner in line with the provisions of the law. But then whether there will be rerun in those wards, I think it's left for INEC to now clarify what its position is in respect to that. But so far, he has concluded the process. You know, he said that will not affect the outcome of the exercise, and that's why he went ahead and declared the winner of the election.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Shafir Suleiman.
All right.
From Jalingo there reporting. Thank you so much for that update.
Okay, so it
from
appears...
Kogi, rather, I beg your pardon.
Yes. Amsfree, it appears that some of the key contestants in that election, for instance, the second position in the election, the SDP candidate says that, well, he wouldn't waste his time going to court. That he claims that, yes, the election was rigged, but he would waste his time going to court. It appears that he has accepted, you know, the outcome, you know, as it is right now, regardless.
Yeah, so that acceptance comes with a caveat, which we definitely, as wider stakeholders, should interrogate. You know, what would be his reasons for making such a qualified acceptance of the outcome? Apparently, I watched the collation last night. I was following it all through, and you could see that there were clear concerns about the results from Kogi Central, because one of the agents of the SDP was saying it has never happened in history that Kogi Central recorded that level of turnout in an election compared to. So we are all for a closer look at the figures to see if it all aligns. But we are also not supportive of a process that disrupts the process, because if you see what some of the agents were trying to do, like you mentioned also in Imo, they were practically trying to hold up the process. And when you hold up the process in that manner, it could have wider implications, which is why I think one missing link again in the electoral process is also the understanding of the political actors about at what point do we position to have a clear picture of the process. For example, at the level of the polling units, results goes directly to the IREV. So I would expect a political party that really is conversant of the process to set up a situation room and have its own collation, based on the IREV figures that are coming in and based on also what it is receiving from its poll agents, because the Electoral Act actually provides for that. And the poll agents are supposed to be trained. But what do we see? We see a situation in which you get to a polling unit and then you see poll agents trading places. Someone will just say, you are APC poll agent. Okay, please, can you join us in? So it is not really an organized process.
So when you think about even those places that were said to be affected by fabrication of results and all that, that's the one we know. I mean, could there even be other places where this same thing happened that we are not aware of?
Absolutely, absolutely. There's a possibility.
So what will that do to the perception, going forward about the whole process? the integrity of the process, even going into the 2027 election, for instance. Perhaps some people have been given an idea of how to circumvent,
Yes, the interesting thing is, it's not even, it was even good that we had the level of vigilance that exposed those pre-filled results and all of that. But we also had several cases where the BVAS was bypassed, in voting. Whether you talk about Bayelsa, you talk about Kogi itself, there were cases of bypass of the BVAS. We are still looking at the figures. We don't want to say that was widespread without looking at the figures. If we have the data and see what the data tells us, we can speak more directly to that in our final reports on the election. But it is a reality that technology is not a silver bullet. People are also undermining technology.
Yes.
People are also trying to find ways around because if the BVAS does not accredit voters, then what is the basis in counting those votes? Which is why actors like the SDP, I'm not saying they should go to court to challenge it, but they should also be able to provide a data-driven basis for some of the positions they are taking, so that in the end we can all learn collectively from how the process is unfolding, and that way our democracy can really have that improvement that my friend here, Dr. Hashim, was talking about, because the improvement we talk about has to be incremental. Yeah.
Okay,
right.
Dr. Hashim.
Before we talk to Doctor, we need to hear, because we've been talking about Kogi and Imo State, where we even heard from our reporter. Right now, we have our reporter on standby who would talk to us about what is happening in Bayelsa. Friday, Peters, good morning. Are you with us?
Yeah, good morning.
Yeah, so we heard that there was a bit of chaos and election was did not happen in Nembe Basambri in Bayelsa State. What is the story behind that?
In Nembe. Hello?
Yes, we're hearing you. Go ahead.
In Nembe election booth, but just that there were some issues like that of the polo unit of the APC chairman that had issue that election did not hold.
All right,
okay.
so right now,
okay.
What you're saying is that the story is contradictory. Election did happen there, but then the APC are the one claiming it didn't?
No, PDP is the one that said the election did not hold there. But the APC chairman said election did hold.
So as you went, were you able to at least, as a reporter, gather the actual information of what really happened there?
Hello?
Are you with us, Friday?
Yeah, it's just where I am now, the network is a little bit disturbing.
Okay, but you can hear us, right?
Hello?
But can you hear us here?
Okay, I can hear now, sir.
Okay, so give us the true situation of what's happening in Bayelsa right now. We know that the collation is supposed to resume this morning, today.
Yes.
What led to the suspension of the collation in the first place?
It's due to the late arrival of materials from southern Niger, and also that of gas. You know, as of yesterday, some places in southern Lebanon was still holding the election. So due to all these areas, the southern Niger and Black, so they now shifted into today, first morning, the collation center.
All right, thank you so much, Friday Peters, for that update from Bayelsa. So, Dr. Hashim, now what is your take on what is happening in Bayelsa State right now? Because even though the result is, leading in favor of the governor, the incumbent governor, but how do you see it panning out in the end?
Yeah, Bielsa, I always knew it's an environment that I'm familiar with. For example, your reporter talking about Southern Niger and Brass. I mean, I had to go to Opoama from Yenagoa. That was my first time getting on the boat, and I thought it was just a 30 minutes drive, but I had to be 5 hours on that boat before we could get to Opoama, which is just a town in Southern Niger local government. So you have other towns farther than Opoama in Southern Niger local government. So trust me, I do understand. And Brass is even a lot farther, you know. So I do understand that terrain, and I can reckon with such challenges that they could be having in terms of logistics and all of that. But I think really before the elections, even from the APC primaries, when David Leon was not allowed to run, from that point, I think the APC was already sort of, how will I say, like they were already having issues, because I think majority of the state people really wanted Lion to come back again and whatnot. So for me, Diri taking advantage of all of that, and really that again, the state is naturally more like a PDP state always and all that. It would not surprise me that Governor Diri is coming back. But talking about the whole fabricated results and all, it is just a very simple mathematics. I mean, 2023 general elections, the whole issue centered around why results were not uploaded to IREV, right? Okay, so then the strategists probably went back home and said, okay, so then let's find a way of how whatever result can get on the IREV. Once it gets on the IREV, sure, it's IREV, you people wanted the results to come on. So they're on IREV, and then they've been calculated and announced. And so every other electoral reform has been a function of issues that emanated from previous elections. So for me, I think the overall thing to take out of this whole thing now is that, first of all, number one, we need to even have a credible opposition. Right, a vibrant and credible opposition that would be able to advance the conversation of how we must reform our Electoral Act. All of these problems around how now IREV and BVAS have come to stay, but then people feel they could use their influence or connections within the sector to fabricate results and put them on the IREV, and that will make it valid, are all the kind of conversations we'll have to all bring about towards discussing electoral reform.
Talking about everything online that we're trying to achieve in Nigeria, we saw how even the United States, had issues with people hacking it, claiming allegedly from Russia and all that. So what do you think we're at that point in Nigeria where we can actually trust this, the INEC, to say that okay, they can deliver on that particular?
So you see,
or should we go back to manual?
The thing with institutions in Nigeria is, and sometimes I feel a little that we're a little unfair on INEC itself when we single it out of all the other institutions. Trust me, a whole lot of the institutions are actually in that sort of light, because if you put me ahead of an agency right now, I have others that I'm going to work with. I'm not going to be a spirit to be in everywhere they're going to be at. So while I have done all I'm supposed to do, give them all they need to work with, ginger their spirit, insist that this is what I want and all of that, but I cannot necessarily be sure that this is what. So at the end of the day, it's still Nigerians who are embedded in all of those institutions who will go and implement all of these things. So
Nigerians are not paying attention.
But the only tool that we have to at least checkmate some of these things, for me, is still continual revision of the Electoral Act and ensuring that all of these problems that we're seeing were at least card reader came and solved the problem, whether we like it or not. Of course it did solve a problem. Then now BVAS has come and IREV, they have the tendency to also solve a certain problem, but then some people are also finding a way to probably, so now the discussion going forward would just have to be how there has to be a robust conversation around the review of the electoral.
Okay, Amsri, do you think that in some way the outcome of the 2023 general elections impacted on the way, the mindset that people went into these off-cycle elections with, specifically with regards to the use of the IRF and the beavers, you know, for instance, in those processes? How do you think that the outcome, for instance, the court orders and the rulings, did it in any way water down the effect that this technology is supposed to have on our process?
Yeah, I think the nexus between what happened in the general elections and then how it has also shaped the issues in the off-cycle election, I think it's more of at the point of citizen perception. Like, yes, you know, there have been judicial interpretations. For example, I think it was the appeal court that talked about, you know, the fact that, you know, the electronic transmission is not really, you know, one of the things that, you know, it's something like it puts in the domain of INEC's discretion. But INEC itself has seen the need to add that extra layer of transparency and to leverage on technology, you know, for that purpose. But you see, when you overpromise and underdeliver, like we saw in the 2023 elections, you create a perception problem and also a legitimacy problem. So I think that is, you know, how it also links up to the issue of turnout. The fact that people are saying, oh, you promised in 2023 general elections that you were going to upload you know, the results to IREV. You did not do it, you know, even when it eventually came, it's you know, people already lost belief that, you know, you really had the good intentions to do what is right. Until today, we have not seen that issue being interrogated well enough. What was the glitch? Who was responsible for the glitch? Was it a glitch in the technology? Was it a human intervention in the process? So we have not done that inquest to understand that this is what happened and this is how to address it. And that was why we made a recommendation after the 2023 elections that actually Nigeria needs a comprehensive audit of the electoral process.
Okay, so as of now, the system that we operate now, does it have the capacity to checkmate the issue of bypassing the beavers like you talk about? You know, he mentioned that, oh, okay, since people are obsessed about the beaver, about the IREV, then they can just go ahead and fabricate whatever result and upload on the IREV. Does that work? Is there a way to checkmate to make sure that only those who actually voted, were accredited by the beavers and voted and all that, was transmitted to?
Absolutely. This is an election security debate because I do not want to think that another technology will now come again. You understand? Like, that's why we said technology is not a silver bullet. The human elements in the process have to also work. The attitudes also have to be right for technology to work. Now, just take a picture of a typical polling unit environment, especially in far-flung areas where security is thin and the process is thinly policed. And then maybe you have a presiding officer coming to the polling unit. Some guys come with AK-47 and point at the. We saw in Bayelsa, you know, INEC official was abducted. You know, when those kinds of things happen.
Or not only AK-47, maybe with a lot of money.
Exactly. So if from the beginning of the process, all of those things come in and compromise, then technology itself is garbage in. You know, it's what you put in there that, you know, eventually will reflect at the back end. But having said that, I think there's another very fundamental point that we have to take cognizance of, which is the fact that if we are writing the report of this off-cycle election, we'll have to write it as the election of the incumbents. And we'll ask the question, have the incumbents really delivered in terms of the, in quotes, what Nigerians call the dividends of democracy to warrant their being elected across the board? If we interrogate that, I think that would take us definitely to the issue of abuse of incumbency powers. And we saw that in the pre-election period.
Do you think that the outcome of the 2020 election again gives the incumbents some kind of advantage to be re-elected?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because in the presidential election, for these 3 states that are voting, Kogi went APC for the presidential. Imo went Labour Party for presidential. But, of course, like Dr. Hashim talked about, all politics being local. When it was time for the governorship, we also saw in the presidential that people could vote a certain way presidential and then vote another way in terms of the local level politics. So, but I think back to that question of incumbency, I think our electoral process must come to a point where we are able to like rein in, the incumbency misuse that we have seen in the pre-election period. An example is in Imo, where opposition parties complained about how they could not put up their posters because they were being told to pay, those revenues, advert revenues, and even when they paid, the ruling parties still found a way to say, no, you have not fulfilled all the obligations. We have to be able to look at that. In Bayelsa, we had, in the pre-election period, issue of palliative rice that came from the federal government 5 billion grant being shared on the eve of the election. So, in a sense, all of these things, muddy the waters and, really do not make it clear between is this political party using its own resources or is it using the collective resources of the people to actually gain undue advantage in the process. So I think those are some of the clear things we will have to interrogate. And if we are doing that, it also have to connect with the question of campaign financing. So all these monies that are being spent, are they state monies? Are they monies generated organically by the political parties, for the purpose of the election? We have a lot of work to do, which is why when we talk about improvement, we have to qualify the improvement and we have to say that there are many other facets of the process that still require a lot of work.
Indeed.
But
Quickly. Yes, due to time.
Because, when you talk about how all of these issues about fabricated results been, I spoke about something very instructive, and right now, if you check even the social media, that's one of the most prominent topics that have been discussed right now, to the extent that the opposition is practically dying, right? Like, there's no vibrant opposition. So check the Supreme Court, for example, and it was instructive. They asked the PDP and the LP to produce alternative results to the ones that are available, and they couldn't. That's because there's no proper coordination of their agents and what have you. So if the opposition, for me right now, I do understand that the civil society is doing her best. It's cumbersome. Nigeria is a big country, 200 million people. You have a whole lot of need of resources to do the sort of things. I've tried something like that before. I couldn't handle it. It was something I wanted to use my private funds. But once I visited one state with my logistics, I was already tired. So what am I saying is the opposition needs to really help Nigeria's democracy right now. They need to get strong. They need to get vibrant. They need to do an in-house strategy on how they would ensure, because I think that is the area that they need to learn a lesson now, that their agents on election days have to be well oiled, well sponsored, with logistics and everything to ensure that they got their votes.
Is it about being oiled? Because that's also another thing to look at.
Logistics.
When
Logistics
you say
is
oiled,
important.
what exactly do you mean oiled?
Well, logistics, I went on to add that there has to be logistics. Some of these agents are sent, because I have been to a typical polling unit where you see some of the political party agents practically even had to come there by themselves. They're not even in contact with any other party chief whip somewhere who is serious about collecting whatever data it is that they have. So he mentioned things around party collection centers too, and all of that. So it all boils down to opposition. And I really, really feel that while the civil society and all of us are talking about how there has to be electoral reforms, the opposition party themselves need to really go back, do some soul searching, coordinate and arrange themselves to the extent that they will be going into the next coming elections well prepared to have their alternative result, their own collection centers.
Thank you so much, gentlemen.
I mean, just one final word, and I really agree with Dr. Hashim. But you see, when the opposition, does not create a contrast between itself and the ruling party, it becomes a problem. For example, they are sharing SUVs in the Senate. No opposition has said this is wasteful. Even the people who campaigned on the platform of we want to cut waste, we want to reduce cost of governance, they are all on the same page when it comes to that. So you can't be a vibrant opposition that way. And my final word would be that what Nigeria's democracy need is an all of government, all of society approach, because it has to be a collective responsibility to reform and reshape our electoral process.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Arms Free at Janaku, countering disinformation lead at the CDD, and also Dr. Hashim Suleiman, political scientist and analyst. Thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak this morning and sharing your perspectives. Very good appraisal of the off-cycle elections, I must say, we've had this morning. All right. Now we'll take a short breather. And then when we return, we'll take a look at the stories on the front pages of our newspapers this morning. Join us again. Thank you for staying with us. You're watching Daybreak on Trust TV. It's time for us to take a look at the dailies on Daybreak now. We'll begin with the Daily Trust newspaper, as always. We have the story, the lead story that talks about, it has a kicker on Imo Kogi Bayelsa polls. It says, Uzodinma Ododo win as Diri maintains lead. It has the riders, opposition candidates, parties kick. Election rigged, but I won't waste my time in court, says SDP's Ajaka. You also have another rider there. PDP supporter killed. INEC officials abducted in Bayelsa. All that on page 4 and on page 12. Then you also have other stories above the lead story. Nigerian lawmakers most ridiculed, says Senate President Akpabio on page 13. Also, flights diversion, congestion at Abuja Airport over runway incursion. And that's also on page 35. Another story there, I will ensure National Assembly creates constitutional role for traditional rulers. That's according to President Bola Tinubu. You have the pictorial there showing you damages around the Shifa Hospital in Gaza City's Al-Rimal district, Gaza City in Palestinian territories. There, the aerial view of that scene. You also have below that grumbling over $54 million domestic airlines trapped fund on page 23. Beneath that, NNPC restores 275,000 barrels daily production on page 24. Without my actions, North would have been on fire, says Matawale on page 6. And then you have also, lastly, 5 killed in Shagamu, Benin expressway crash. These are the main stories on Daily Trust newspaper front page.
Governorship election, the APC wins Imo, Kogi, and Diri Silver no fate today. This is the major story on the Daily Sun this morning. Uzodinma wins all 27 local government areas, scores 540,308 votes, and PDP and LP reject the result. The PDP leads in Bayelsa and INEC to hold fresh election in 59 Kogi polling units on Saturday. You'll find all the stories on page 6 and 28. Below the pictorial there, we see Jam Loud's Senate's probe of admission racketeering. Identifying arrest sponsors of electoral offences in Bayelsa, Kogi, Imo, Sarab tells the INEC. You find this on page 27. NAF bombards terrorists, a stronghold in Borno kills scores, destroys gun, trucks and others. Appeal Court's affirmation of Kailu's election good for Senate and the country. That's according to APC chair. NGE conference, Tinubu Amuka, Oba Igbenya, 300 editors to storm Uyo. Governor Eno is the guest of honor. And also we have cultists kill 5 in Rivers and give conditions for ceasefire. There's also panic grips CBN staff over planned reorganization. These are some of the stories on the Daily Sun this morning.
All right, so let's take a look at the Blueprint newspaper, where you have the kicker there. Off-circle polls. Amid protests, Uzodinma re-elected, Imo governor and Ododo Kogi governor-elect. You also have Diri leads in Bayelsa, PDP, SDP, LP kick in Imo, Kogi. And also you have the next rider there. It's victory well-deserved. Meseko, APC deputy national publicity scribe. You have all that on page 6. And then above the lead story, you have the above that you have oil production up to 275,000 barrels per day. NNPCL settles Pengerson, total management row. And then you have also immigration loses 3 in auto crash on Kano Zaria Road. Bandits kill 7, kidnap many in fresh Zamfara attack. Executive legislature collaboration essential for robust fiscal policy. And also court orders reinstatement payment of NSITF staff's salary arrears. Inflation may hit 30% by December 2023, says KPMG. Tinubu to declare editors' annual confab open. And then you have Israeli-Hamas war. Arab Islamic nations condemn military offensive. These are the main stories on the Blueprint newspaper.
Right now, we have Suleiman Ubangaya, the CEO of Sky Limit Media Group, editor and former deputy president of Nigerian Guilds of Editors, joining us to discuss the front pages. Good morning and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Of course. All right, so let's start with a story that says bandits kill 7 and kidnapped many in fresh Zamfara attack. And also in front of the Daily Trust newspaper, we saw Matawale saying, without my actions, North would have been on fire. I mean, considering that we have been seeing reoccurrence of insecurity in the northeastern region, do you think that's, a bold statement, something that he could say that, yes, I actually did something for my region?
I think it's a joke taken too far, as far as I am concerned. Bello Matole, the immediate first governor of Zamfara State, has performed abysmally low, I mean, in terms of taming insecurity in the backwater state of Zamfara. He left a legacy of serious ruination. A lot of damage was done in terms of management of security in Zamfara. And he left a lot of problems that the present governor is grappling with. So I do not see why or what he means by saying the North would have been on fire if he had not taken certain measures. Of course, he did make reference to some measures he has taken, like the shutting down of communication and other things. But has that resulted in any positive outcome? It did not. So he doesn't have any right, honestly, as far as the reality on ground is concerned, to make such an outlandish claim.
I mean, if anything, is the North even really not on fire right now? Because, I mean, if we are to do an assessment of the situation right now, security-wise, it's not as if the North is the safest place to be today in Nigeria. Traveling along the roads, you would understand, what it means, for people who travel every now and then, and all the stories that we hear about people being kidnapped, schools being raided, and large number of students being abducted and so on. It doesn't show any sign that, there is safety and security in the north.
And let's not forget new emergence of bandits, different bandits group coming out to make attacks. Also, there is this attack on, say, celebrities, major stakeholders in the north who, especially the northerners, feel that they are not outspoken when it comes to this kind of things. And also there is that anger of saying that the president should not even in the first place have given Matawali the Minister for Defense. So what's your take on all of this?
Honestly, I think the rhythm has to do with politics. There was the PI initially that the Supreme Court may end up asking for a rerun. And I think the president, from pillars we have in the bill, is that he felt he needed some politicians around him. Matole, of course, let me say the APC was able to deliver in Zamfara State for President Tinubu. So he probably felt he needed Matole in case there will be a rerun. Otherwise, there is no reason whatsoever for such a person whose performance is completely poor to be appointed to a key ministry like the Ministry of Defense. And that is even the most surprising because, of course, Matole can be appointed a minister for any reason, especially political, but appointing him specifically to the Ministry of Defense is the most ridiculous of things. Only the president can explain that, and I think he owes Nigerians explanation as to why he appointed someone being accused left, right, and center of exacerbating insecurity as Minister of Defense.
Do you think the people are also to be blamed for this, of not speaking enough, to be listened by these leaders?
Sorry, I didn't get
Do you think Nigerians, Northerners, are not speaking enough on what is happening?
Definitely. I think the issue now is people are really afraid to even come out to say it out. That is on one part. On the other part, people are grappling with the realities of everyday existence in Nigeria. There is a lot of poverty, a lot of people are grappling with the reality of making ends meet, having something to, fend for themselves and for their families. So they hardly have time to engage in such, in saying the truth, in telling the truth to power. In informing the federal government that what you have done is wrong and that there is need for a review, especially as far as certain appointments like that of Matawala are concerned.
Okay, now let's talk about another story here which has been muted. Well, not muted, it has been echoed by the president, and we've seen steps in the National Assembly in that regard, talking about constitutional role for traditional rulers. So at the 70th birthday of one of the traditional rulers, the president, represented by Tunji Ojo, was quoted, that's the Minister of Interior, was quoted to have said, that he is going to ensure that, there's constitutional role for traditional rulers. Now, what do you make of this, and what role are we talking about here?
For me, it is an idea whose time has really come. The traditional rulers have been playing very key roles in terms of ensuring stability in our, localities. For example, talking about intelligence, it's only with intelligence that you will be able to curtail insecurity. And I did mention here, the last time I featured on this program, that by the global standards, 60% of role in terms of intelligence gathering should be borne by the society. And that can only be driven by the traditional rulers who are the conscience of the society. So as it is now, the Constitution doesn't give them any specific role. They are just there, being managed by the system.
But in some way, some traditional rulers are led to be complicit sometimes, even with the whole issue of security, in the country. In Zamfara, I recall some traditional rulers were suspended, for being complicit.
Yeah, that is true, but that does not remove from the fact that the overwhelming majority of the traditional rulers are still the conscience of our society doing what is right. And talking about the Zamfara monarchs that have been either suspended or deposed a few years ago, at least we can say that certain action has been taken against them. It is not that they have been left on their job to continue to sabotage the society. So at least something has been done, and majority of the traditional rulers are doing what is right. So I do not think that is enough reason for us not to give them, not assign constitutional responsibilities to them.
But don't you think that is what got us to this point? I mean, while growing up, we saw the power the traditional rulers were holding, where even when a president or a governor should go there, there is massive respect for these people. Do you know that they control the crowd? People are with them. They have the people's interest at heart. But then all of a sudden, they started getting paid, where according to the constitution, even a councillor is above a traditional ruler. Don't you think that is what got us here, and we're actually heading to more, I want to be in more of a political space and all that?
Yes, you're right. The traditional rulers, honestly, there are, I think, principally two issues there. One is politicization of the monarchy system in Nigeria. You know, we have seen appointments of people that are not traditionally fit to be to hold certain traditional responsibilities, yet been appointed because of one political reason or the other. The other one has to do with the conduct of certain traditional rulers themselves. Unfortunately, as my brother here is trying to point out, some of them have not lived up to expectation. You know, their performance has been hugely disappointing. So I think these are some of the reasons why there is a lot of, you know, that aura, you know, is largely lost. So we no longer see the traditional institution in the kind of, with the kind of reverence that it used to hold, as you rightly pointed out years back.
All right. Well, before we round up the show, I know we still have a few more minutes to go. I'd like for us to talk, even though on a sad note, but I would like for us to talk a little more about the legacies of the veteran actor Usman Baba Patigi, popularly known as Samanja. We all recall his times, you know, in those days on NTA, where you watch him delight viewers, you know, with his, you know, acts and all that very comic, you know, way, you know, of displaying his acts and all that. What do you say about his person, the person of Samanja, Mazam Farmer, as they say? Yeah. That's the name of the show. What do you recall about his person, and you know, what can you say about the legacies that he's leaving for even the theater, acting, and the, you know, movie industry as we have it now?
Well, first of all, it's a very profound loss, not only for the arts industry in Nigeria, but for every sector of the Nigerian society. Samanja Mazampama left a legacy that can be very difficult to replicate. He left a shoe that will be difficult to be filled, and one of his legacies, for example, is I read an article of someone talking about a turbulence on an air flight returning to Nigeria from Medina. You know, there was serious turbulence, and a lot of people were losing hope, thinking there was going to be an air crash. And Samanja was one of the stabilizing factors on that flight, you know, trying to encourage people to be stable and to reassure them that nothing was going to happen, and indeed nothing happened. You know, so he left a legacy that is very, very difficult to fill. And of course, when we were kids growing up in different, especially northern societies, it was part of Samanja's legacies that you know, he inculcated in us the love for the military. A lot of people that are in the military who have become generals, some are still serving, some have retired, or their membership of that institution to Samanja's roles, you know, always trying to project the military in a very positive way.
Let's not forget the mustache that he always carries.
Exactly.
His signature mustache.
His signature mustache, yeah. In a comic way, he really projected not just the military, but the security services in a very positive way. May his soul rest in perfect peace.
Lessons for up-and-coming artists, or I would say actors of today. I mean, someone was describing him as someone who was not pushed into drama but because of money, you know, per se, but someone who just was passionate and just wanted to get an opportunity to show people what it means, you know, and to delight people and so on. So, but if you look at, you know, some of us young people in these days, the whole idea of going into the act is not driven by, you know, passion per se, but just to make money.
And that is why it is very difficult for the present generation of artists, you know, to leave the kind of legacy someone, a patriot like Samanja, bequeaths to the rest of us. Because this thing about pecuniary interest, once it is a driving factor in any profession, you find that a lot of gaps are going to be created. And that is what is happening now. A lot of gaps, you see a lot of unprofessional acts. And just simply because the whole idea is money, and you can be assigned any role, whether it fits you or not, in as much as the right amount is there, you know, no matter your reputation, you take over the role, or whether you can interpret it very well or not. You know, these are the kind of things. But in the days of Samanja, it was professionalism at work. It was entirely positive, the way they projected the society, the way they projected different segments of the society is something we will continue to live with and to be anti-held them for.
All right. Well, it's a good place to end the discussion this morning. Thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak this morning and sharing your perspective with us as always. We appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That's Suleiman Obangaya, CEO, Sky Limits Media Group. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, for our viewers who are watching, perhaps you could recall, if you may, you could write down in the comment section, if you're on social media, moments you remember about the veteran actor Samanja, as we all know it. I'm sure if I call his name Usman Baba, particularly many people may not reckon with that name, but if you say Samanja, many people remember Samanja Mazamfama. You remember names like Kotokore, you know, remember names like Mutu Adole and so on. These are names that we grew up hearing on TV, on the NT and all that. It was a great delight, really, and I believe that he will be greatly missed. And our prayers and our hearts are with his family and his relatives. Well, that's our show for today. In case you've missed, you can always catch up across all our social media platforms and also on our YouTube live stream. I am Ayuba Ila. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.
And I am Sumaya Abubakar. Thank you so much for staying with us. Please do stick around for 360 Sports Update with Emmanuel Fashimi. Do have a lovely day.